There's some good news coming out of Venezuela. Previously, the Venezuelan government had developed a guerrilla army of regular citizens to help combat a possible U.S. invasion of the country. Now, Representative Maria Corina Machado told El Universal newspaper that Venezuela is planning to make that guerrilla army and train it in conjunction with the regular army to help defend the country from a possible U.S. invasion, and that its numbers, the amount of people in the guerrilla army, is expected to reach 1 million people by 2013. Now, they also say that they're going to focus on specific targets. Strengthening territorial militias in order to ensure necessary strength for overall defense of the nation, targeting recruitment levels of 1 million by 2013 and 2 million by 2019. Right now, they're instituting a plan to cover the legal and logistical angles necessary to set up a kind of a force to transform the professional army into a guerrilla army. Now, this is a very good tactic and one that was obviously borrowed from the Cuban military itself. While Cuba does maintain a professional military, they are still all trying to continue a guerrilla-type function if need be. Basically, what they're doing is acknowledging the obvious. If the United States does invade Venezuela, obviously they're going to bomb military bases, government headquarters, supply chains, and all of that ahead of time. The same thing that was done with the Iraq War, except the Iraqi army fell apart in 2 weeks. Now, the idea here is recognizing that the real resistance against the U.S. came from irregular guerrilla forces once the country was invaded. Now, Venezuela recognizes this, that they cannot match firepower with the United States. Obviously, they don't have the bombs, the artillery, the drone strikes, and all other kinds of cowardly weapons. So what they are going to do is wait for the U.S. forces to come into the country and attempt to occupy it, then use their guerrilla force to eventually push the United States Army out. I mean, it's a good tactic. They know they don't have the firepower to stand up to a regular conventional force, or at least one the size of the United States Army. Obviously, one that was smaller, obviously they could. They're just taking the right tactic here. I mean, come on. Look at the successes guerrilla armies have had in the past against the United States, that despite superior firepower and everything else, the Viet Cong kicked their ass. Because the United States Army cannot handle guerrilla tactics, particularly nothing on the scale that the Vietnam War actually was. And we would possibly see something very similar to that kind of a situation if a military engagement against Venezuela did break out from U.S. actions. To take the Taliban, for example, their resistance to U.S. occupation has been far greater than that of the Iraqi resistance. The Iraqi resistance really... It's still a violent thing that kills a lot of people, but it's relatively weak. When you compare that to the tactics of, say, the Taliban, it's almost insignificant. Now, the Taliban has been extremely successful against coalition forces during the time of the occupation. Now, see, the thing is, once you have an invasion like that, you've bombed out all the main supply routes and supply chains and government infrastructure that supports the military. The Taliban has managed to reorganize all of that outside of the actual infrastructure of the Afghan government, which is why they've been able to continue to keep fighting to this level. I mean, not just the fact alone that the Taliban has overwhelming support in Afghanistan among the population, and they are extremely highly motivated to do what it is that they do. But they are very well organized, and that's their main strength. Hugo Chavez is understanding that. That's why the Iraqi resistance has not really been successful in my eyes anyway, is the fact that they're not heavily coordinated. You've got Shia militias, Sunni militias, and Kurds, and all the other groups. They don't have one unified leadership with one overall goal, which is exactly what the Taliban does have. It has the typical hierarchical command structure, but it has a set of goals and a top leadership that does coordinate everything and give it its shape and gives it the various orders to carry out the tactics and objectives that they have. That's what Hugo Chavez is doing here. He's understanding the nature of needing a more sophisticated guerrilla army that can be somewhat backed up by a standard government, even one that would technically be in exile. This is actually a very, very good idea by the Venezuelan government, and I hope they meet all their targets and they do get a 2 million guerrilla strong army by 2019.